to say. Apologies that I'm just a little black square with my name, but I'm Patricia Nicoll, for anyone who doesn't know me. Welcome to the presentation of the Knaut-Rhuland Conservation Plan. So really looking forward to this. I think it'll be a very interesting opportunity. So I'm a board member of the Before we start this evening, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So this evening, we're very pleased to have the SableArc team here to present an overview of the conservation plan, which is currently under development. This is an opportunity for all of us to learn more about what the team has already learned to date and to understand a little bit better the priorities for us to focus on in the short, medium, and longer term. So I have a couple of housekeeping things I'll mention. We'll keep this event to approximately 1 hour. If there are a lot of questions and if we maybe run out of time this evening, Greg and team have graciously agreed that we could send them things in writing, questions in writing, if they come up late. Days or so after this, knowledge and ask questions. So speaking of questions, if you have any during the presentation, could you please just write them in the chat box, which is probably at the bottom of your screen. And then I will be monitoring the questions. And at the end of the formal presentation, I can pass those to one of the presenters or one of our Heritage Society members to answer. We're recording the presentation and we will put it on our website after tonight. So if you want to look at it again, you can. Also, anyone who isn't able to join us tonight can look at it if it's there. So I really would like to thank everybody who's attending right now. I know everyone is busy and it's great to see so many little boxes. Too bad we can't meet in person, but this is good too. I hope that everyone has received and had an opportunity to read our spend so much time talking but I did want to let people know that we have done really well with our fundraising efforts, and that was mentioned in the newsletter. We have now raised around $20,000. That's up over what was reported in the newsletter. So we continue to receive donations, and we're so happy and thankful to all the donors for the generosity, and we really, really appreciate it. We applied in January for a Parks Canada grant of approximately $55,000 to help pay for the most urgent work required on the house. And we hope to hear, well, we will hear from Parks Canada in the spring. We hope our application will be successful. So I think maybe that's enough from me. I'm going to turn things over. I'll do quick introductions for those of you who were not able to meet the team when they were here in the fall. We have Greg Munn, who's a senior architect with a broad experience, including many projects related to heritage and conservation in Canada and the US. We have Dr. Tom Morrison of Heritage Standing, who is an experienced structural engineer and has worked for more than a decade exclusively on historical structures. And last, but by no means least, we have Monica Norman, who has engineering and architectural training and experience with historical restoration, conservation, and preservation. and has been working with Greg on the project. So we're really pleased to have this exceptional team. I will turn things over to Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. Thanks very much. Pleasure to see you all, and pleasure to be here this evening. And what we're going to do is show you an abridged version of the report, the conservation plan that we have been working on. We have sent the draft, I guess you could call it a 90% draft, onto Patricia and Nathalie earlier today, and they can share that. That goes more in depth of showing more information that we don't necessarily need to show you tonight. We're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of the thing. So what we okay, fantastic. So yeah, I guess Monica, you can just click through on that. So what we want to do is show you an overview of what the sections are going to be, and what we are going to go through tonight. We're going to go through our objectives and methodology, and briefly the format of the plan, and we are going to focus on those items that we have discovered in the house that could require repairs, restoration, even some new construction. And we also have some programming ideas that could potentially better fulfill your mission and vision. And the treatment alternatives are those items that they are not specifically about maintenance of existing conditions of the house, but those are added treatments to consider in the future. And then we are going to present initial cost estimates, and I will just put out a word of caution on these numbers. We are still working on the estimates. It's an estimated estimate at the moment. And I've bumped the numbers up just a little bit, just so if the final numbers come in, if they're better than what they're showing, then that's great. If they're kind of the same, it's always a shock to see numbers, prices and costs of things. But it's a work in progress. So take that with a grain of salt, but we will have that more tightened down a little bit more when we present the final. And just before I go any further, yes, if we get any, we'll go through questions tonight. And then we will ask that the draft report is shared among the board and whomever Patricia and Nathalie would like to share it with, and getting comments back on that. And from that, we will we will complete the report. So I think we said we would give you, was it 2 weeks to review that?
I think we said 1 week.
Oh, 1 week. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can talk about, if it's 1 week or 2 weeks, that's fine. Something like that. And then a couple of weeks to finish it up. So yes, the objectives and methodology. So I won't read the whole thing, but the investigation was, first of all, myself and Monica and Tom, we were in Lunenburg in October, and we investigated the house from top to bottom, or I guess bottom to top. And Tom is his expertise is structural engineering of historic properties and knowledge of historic structures. And I'll tell you right now that the items that are on our list that we were going to show you they're prioritized from the most urgent to the least. So anyway, we did the investigation, then we identified those items that needed work, needed help, and then we prioritized from most urgent to things on the wish list in the future. And then our deviseful strategy is brainstorming the outcomes of the plan, and some ideas, trying to be creative with some ideas there for the future of the property. So. And when we evaluated the material of the house, we have this developed rating system from excellent, good, fair, and poor. So those items that were in poor are, of course, the high priority items. And I'll I think that's all I need to say. That's pretty self-explanatory. This is the overall report. We have the project background and the methodology written out, and you'll be able to read what that is about. There was a lot of background to put into this report. So we have the history of the house, taken from the two previous reports that were done several years ago. And we also have a support material, the Venice Charter and the Parks Canada designation of the house, identifying the historic features and the reason that the house is a listed designated historic property. So from that, we go into the report of the condition assessment, and we look at the site, the exterior of the house, and then we go room by room. And that is not part of the presentation tonight. That is again in the report, but it's a description of what is there right now, talking about such things as on the interior, floors, ceilings, walls, trim, doors, like every type of material broken down and then assessed for condition. And then in treatment and use, that is where we, and then we have, and then we have the condition assessment. As I mentioned, we assess the condition of each of those elements in each of the spaces. And then treatment and use, there's programmatic considerations, talking a little bit, again, as I said, about the vision and some things to, some of these things that could be part of a reparation or a restoration. They can go in a couple of different directions depending on how you see the museum moving forward in the future. And this report is primarily about the condition of the building today, but it really starts to ask those questions about what you want to see, how you see the museum tomorrow, and maybe start to put into place some planning and strategies to evolve the property. And then there's, yeah, that's great. Sorry. So these are some items, and Tom, you've made note of these items as well, because you looked at the exterior and the foundation. But there are some items to do with the site around the house that there are some moisture issues in the cellar, and part of the issue is the landscaping around the building. So it's, you're on a tight site, on the sloping site, but there's some pretty instinctive things here to do, is to make sure that French drain is working correctly, and taking the plantings and that planting bed wall away from up next to the foundation of the house. And I wonder, Tom, if you wanted to say anything more to that.
I think it matches the same thing. I mean, with buildings like this, so much of it is that you're trying to control where moisture comes from. You can't necessarily aim to remove it completely. You just kind of say, okay, any water coming down the building, you want to somehow have a clear path that flows away. And when, I think Greg probably did the same as I did, I kind of picked up the tiles there on the lower picture to see where that was, and you can see kind of the piping they had and the catch basin were clogged. And you look around and you kind of see that all the neighboring roofs from the Opera House drain out back in that similar area, and there's just a lot of water. And the better the water keeps away, the lower you can drop the moisture, the lower the moisture, the more the moisture is controlled around the building, the less likelihood you have of damage to masonry, and less likelihood you have biological damage to any wood elements. You'll see you get sills starting to rot and that kind of thing. So mimicking that idea that a key part of that plan is just simple things, and making sure water moves away is usually a starting point in most buildings I look at.
Yeah. And this is further to your investigation, Tom. So if you want to keep going with this part.
All right, so continuing along, going through the building, there are a few very specific problems, a lot of things that are good, and then I guess the balance like that. So in the upper picture catches an area where there have been repairs to the floor joists and on the upstairs that they're not strong enough. So it's somewhere where the floor has got some problems. But like the other areas we identified where there are some issues with the floor, that's not hard to fix. There's some questions that fit into kind of what Greg and Monica are looking at on this vision, and then to reflect what you're going to want to go, and how that space can be used for how you can most practically address it, making sure you don't impact any of your value. And so the same very much for that lower picture, where you're just having one piece has failed. It is an issue, it has to be dealt with, but it's not something that's a big, I guess, a worry in my mind. Is something that's just saying, hey, this is something that has to be fixed. I think the slides you prepared, the next one has a bigger discussion point in my, oh no, it was the masonry's further along. Sorry, I got them mixed up. Similarly with the roof structure and down through the buildings, the roof structure, when I was going through it, I could notice there's a bunch of movement and different stress in the roof. I actually do the opposite. Greg and Monica, I often start at the top of the building and work my way down. And there were little things like the fact that they had adjusted where this chimney was located at some point in the past, and they'd cut through the prior rafter. So something should be done to make that work properly. There's a bit of a patching around it, but when I look at the wood, there's more stress on it than there should be. And considering how easy it opens up for water to get in at different joints and movements in the roof causing wear and tear, you don't want to just sit and say, oh, we can just leave it. It's better to fix it, because that will help your other things work better. The other stresses in the roof were suggesting to me something odd, and so we spent some time mapping it out and look at different theories. It also matched very much what we saw in the basement, which maybe that's the next slide. There we go. That there's not a whole lot of support in one corner of the building because the foundation walls more or less failed. Looking through the foundations, we'll start with the obvious one there in that front corner. The stones are moving out, things aren't being held properly where they should be. It leads to that wall that's in the basement not being supported properly, so that wall starts to drop down. And then kind of because a whole building works together, it doesn't always work how you intend it to work or how it's designed to work, but it all ends up working together. So when that wall starts wanting to drop, the roof structure starts trying to pull it up, and that causes your roof to twist, and it causes all these weird movements throughout the building. So our dominant theory is that most of these are fairly related, and that you just need to start one by making sure there's something solid there at the bottom. So that's going to be a continuation of prior masonry work. In the other areas, there were some questions on it would be worth monitoring what happens with the other foundations, because there's a different way they repaired it and when they did it. I guess that was last year. If monitoring over the next few years shows it's great, then no problem. There's no point undoing anything. But it'll be good to keep an eye on that. This other front one, you'll want to have someone repairing it that can work with some of the more compatible mortars and materials. It's a high moisture area of the building. It is very vulnerable. And if you're using new products, like if you're using the products you would typically use in new construction, you run risks, you trap moisture in the walls, or you can create stress concentrations just because the wall system doesn't necessarily work like how you design a new building. So it's not a big repair, but it's unique enough that it's worth getting a bit of design for it, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, making sure the people doing the work understand the unique nature and that they have the allowance to do it differently. Because of how the construction world is framed, a lot of techniques that are most compatible with this kind of building, kind of best suited for working together as a system, aren't products that professionals are allowed to use without some engineers saying that, yes, no, this makes sense, this is a special case. So there are a few reasons like that getting some design work there will help. The extent of the wall there that needs to be done isn't huge. And then the other areas will take bit by bit. I think that covers the main point. And people are free to interrupt me too, because I never know how much detail to get into. And I could talk for hours just on a masonry wall and probably bore most people to tears while I would be thoroughly enjoying it. Greg, did you want to talk on chimneys, or were you thinking I would chat on that?
Oh, yeah, you go ahead on chimneys as well.
Okay. Yeah, so just looking through the chimneys, again, establishing what's going well, what's not. In that lower room, where I think there's seen as a lot of potential, and I would tend to agree from my experience, there's a lot of potential for how it could be used. The main fireplace has been bricked up, the masonry had taken quite a beating. So this is, again, requires a little bit of a careful touch to get the full value and benefit about the space you could create there. And seeing what's possible, really. In some of the upper rooms, some of the lintels were starting to corrode. There's some movement around stonework. Yeah, sorry, the lintel being that metal bar that Monica's showing. Thank you, Monica. It's just a metal bar put across. That suggests to me these fireplaces have been rebuilt a few times, because the type of metal that appears to be isn't something that would have been in use for the period of the house. Not necessarily a big deal. Every house is a bit of a changing story, but just to be aware of. So as you repair it, these are little repairs that you can address as you go to make it so it's operable to meet your needs, I guess. I think that covers the main points. I don't want to take up too much of the time here.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, and we will get back to talking about chimneys when we talk about the kitchen in a few minutes, I think, as well. And we can start talking about the potential to maybe restore those chimneys to working order. But we're going to go now to the exterior of the house, and it's quite obvious to see, but it's really fun to see these up close photographs that the clapboards, for instance, on the front of the house, the south side of the house, have been replaced in recent years, but the clapboards of the two sides and the rear have not. None of them are original to the house. There just wouldn't be any that would have lasted quite that long. One thing that I did notice is, we noticed, is that the clapboards on the front, they have a narrower profile than the clapboards on the sides and rear. So the to-weather dimension there is different. So what we have done is we have added cost or pricing into the estimate to repair the clapboards. At some point, they will have to be replaced, as in any house with shingles or clapboards. And at that time, it's recommended that they all have the same profile. Also, this is getting into the idea of authenticity. And we were looking as well at other houses that have been restored in the area in Lunenburg. And it seems that I call it the datum line, would not have been original. This is that stripe at the main floor would have been clapboards all the way up. A minor detail, it's fine the way it is, but I think for authenticity's sake, if there was any repairs to be done, that could be removed and just put clapboards in that area. And of course, just, be great. I'm all about historic color. So, it'd be nice to research some historic colors for the exterior. So then we go on to the trim. I will say, these are some examples that are some poor condition. A lot of it needs to be, it's better to repair than replace, but you can see some of those corner boards, they need to be replaced. But the eave returns at the top there with the bracket, they seem to be in good enough condition to be repaired, but they should be repaired sooner than later. And then on the porch, this as well, there's just some loose pieces. There's some rot. The porch seems to be, we don't have records of exactly what that porch looked like, but it was probably pretty close to this. And so that's quite good, but it is loose and needs some repair. There's just some rot there. Again, we're going over these elements quite quickly, but on the interior, we looked at the drywall the drywall over top of the plaster walls, and just for authenticity's sake, it would be a nice idea to remove the drywall and the pegboard, and maybe have some displays in these rooms that do not cover up the walls. But this would mean, repairing the plaster, and I would guess, we of course didn't look behind the drywall, but it was likely put up because the plaster was in rough shape. But we have pricing in here for plaster repair, and just, could be a medium priority idea. I want to say overall, the house, I could have started with this, the house is in quite good condition overall. These are just things, a lot of these things are just things to keep up on, maintenance, like the exterior items that are, once they start going downhill, they go downhill quickly. And the plaster, again, it can be, there are methods to reattach any loose bits to the lath above and cutting out the cracked bits and repairing, just to get, keep it from deteriorating. So mechanical system. There's baseboard heaters hither and yon throughout the house, and currently the house is not heated in the winter. This is, we highly recommend that you do put in a program to heat the house through the winter. This is contributing to the cracking plaster, the plaster loosening from the lath, and also the subsidence of the house itself. It needs to be kept at a steady, it doesn't have to be high. You don't have to open the house, and you don't have to make it, comfortable for human presence in the house, but it would be a good idea to keep the house heated through the winter. And we have a mechanical engineer, a consultant on the team that we have gone through this with, and of course we don't want to be touching any historic fabric if we don't have to, and so ductwork is out of the question. Where you going to put the ducts? You don't want to build chases. You don't want to be knocking holes into things. There are, as you can see, these baseboard radiators throughout the house. They are sort of unobtrusive, but still they're not an authentic. They detract somewhat from the aesthetic of the house. So the idea we have here is to put in a radiant floor heating system as a strategy. There's several benefits to that, and one thing is you don't see it. Another thing is that the heat is slow and steady. So if say the power went out in the middle of winter for a couple of days, the system will keep it'll cool down very slowly. So it's quite a safe. It keeps the temperature up so you don't have a sudden freeze in the house. And what we are talking about here is a glycol system. It's a hydronic system. So it'll be coils in the we'll get to the basement, but if there's a new slab put into the basement, we would recommend putting radiant hydronic system in that slab with glycol instead of water, and that's antifreeze. So it doesn't, even if the house would freeze, the system would not. And having that heat in the basement would help with the dampness of the house throughout. I thought it was interesting in Tom's report, and it makes total sense, but you have humidifiers going in the basement, and what that is actually doing is pulling moisture in through the walls of the house. But if there was constant low heat down there in the basement, it would help to keep it dry as well as just keeping it temperate. And you have a exposed ceiling and the main floor from the basement side, so you could install the hydronic system between the joists on the main floor, and in the attic you could also have it in the floor here. Those loose boards, you could put it in those spaces. There are questions about, doesn't it make the wood shrink? Well, it doesn't. It's a gentle heat that takes a long time to heat up, and it takes a long time to cool down. So it's unobtrusive, and it's just running PEX, flexible pipes through the walls. So that is an idea, and there's more to that. There's other related sections that we'll get to. For the attic floor, it's just some loose boards up there, and just suggest that there would be some repair to that floor. Oh, we have the roof in here. It's showing that it's in excellent condition, and it's quite new. It's going to be very efficient for a very long time, but just recommendation. Someday it will need to be replaced, and it won't be for a very long time, but it would be just more appropriate to have a cedar shingle roof on there. That's all that's in there for. So the basement floor, yes, I touched on that already. It seems the floor you're looking at in this photograph is not original. There's reason to believe there's an older floor below that, and that would also gain you some ceiling height in these spaces. Of course, the house was changed to become a tenement, and there were some changes upstairs, and there was in the basement as well. There's living spaces and a bathroom down there. It seems there are some remnants of different periods down there. So in a way, I believe it would be appropriate to strip away some of the layers in the basement if you would choose to restore the kitchen, for instance. But one thing would be to get that floor out and putting in a new level one at the appropriate level. And that would mean hand digging something out there, but again, putting a radiant system into it. And the wood ceilings, this is not an original finish here. It was most likely, a plaster ceiling, and there's likely evidence of that. But again, that's all part of the idea to restore the kitchen that we will get into. But pulling that ceiling down too also exposes the structure to put a radiant system in. Now, these are some treatment alternatives, calling them architectural recommendations. We were, a little puzzled, for instance, on the upper right-hand corner, to see that arch in this room where the office is and the restroom is beyond, and take a closer look at it. It looks very similar to the arch on the main floor, but this was added by a previous owner, and if this space was ever open to the public or seen, it's confusing history. So as lovely as it is, it just would be something to consider removing, maybe using somewhere else. But it seems to confuses history within the house, as does the photo on the left. That's the double doorway in the middle of the hall. Our hypothesis is that these were added again when the house was a tenement, and you can see there's the chair rail and the cornice molding. They run right through the wall, and it's attractive trim on it, but it's not matching anything else in the house, and it's again it's just a little confusing. And for the sake of being just a little bit more authentic, we recommend you consider just removing that doorway. Now you could leave it there to maybe interpret the house as a tenement as well, if that's part of your mission. But if the thought is to bring this house back even further, you've done a wonderful job in presenting the house, and it's quite authentic. But this is another one of those items that is confuses the story a little bit. At the bottom, there's the stack of doors that's in the basement, and I believe Pat, I think you told me maybe that they were removed, maybe it was Nathalie, to allow a better flow through the house for the visitors. But the opinion is, put them back in. Just for one thing, if the house is heated, it would help to zone the house and keep the heat in some places. I mean, the house is going to be drafty. We'll get to that. But there was a reason for the doors in the first place, and it's to zone the rooms and hold the heat. So if the house is going to be heated, it would be a good idea to have the doors back on as well. And it also just would enhance the experience for the visitor. So we're going to go through some of these architectural treatments, alternatives. And the idea was floated when we were first there, if the attic space could be potentially usable space, either as an office or better storage or something like that. We did a code research, National Building Code research on this. And if a two-story building that's used for the public can have one stair, which is what you have up the center. When you go to 3 floors, you need 2 stairs for the whole house. So that would either mean building a emergency stair, exit stair on the exterior of the house, and it likely would be on one of the gable ends, and turning a window into a door. You would also need to put a door from the 2nd floor out onto that stair as well. So that is a lot of change just to gather some square footage in the attic space. It can be used as storage. And the other issue, though, is the current stair that goes to the attic. A lot can be forgiven, but that stair really is not safe for daily use. If you're careful in moving things up in the way it's used right now, that would be all right. But really, you would need build a second stair, probably somewhere inside the house, to get from the second floor to the third. So, that would be incredibly obtrusive to the house itself. So we just recommend let go of the idea of using the attic. It would just end up changing the house and just trigger a whole lot of work that would be costly and would be detrimental to the character of the house itself. So another idea then is the basement. And it would be, a great idea to restore that kitchen. As a thought here, and it's priced, roughly priced at the moment, how to restore the kitchen as a display space for interpretation and use. And there was the ideas floated that it could be a demonstration kitchen, and putting and making those chimneys, or at least maybe that one fireplace usable again. And then there is the rest of the basement area. And as you can see in this period photograph from, I think it's 1979, or just not long before 1979 when this was taken. I think that's when the little bump was taken off, and there was that door. That wall has been filled in, and it's a new section of wall there. So really, we sort of considered, you could put a door back in that location. We talked about we also believe there was a door from the basement off the center hall under the main front door that came out under the stairs. The thing is, today, the street is wider than it was. You'd have steps up to the sidewalk. It would be very steep. It would be this snow catcher. It would be lovely, but it would not be a very usable door. But you could put one in this location, and the base of it would be at floor level. If you properly drained it, you could get it ramped down to that door, which actually would make the basement wheelchair accessible. And that would be a much safer door. And also it's away from the stairs. Like, you want your exits sort of apart from each other. So potentially that could be something to consider, and believe it would be allowable by Parks Canada to reinstate a door like that. You could put a fence along the wall of the street, to screen that if so desired, but that might be the best option for putting a door into the basement. And then you have the opportunity in the other half of the basement and behind the kitchen, if you get a dry, proper slab in there, there could be meeting space down there, storage space, better suited for mechanical space, even maybe gift shop down there, whatever programmatic things you would like to do. It could be the office and put a restroom in there. And then you could remove the office and restroom from the second floor, and you could have all that more space to interpret and make the house from the main floor up more pure. So I'll leave that, and then along with jumping to the radiant system, the house needs insulation. So, there could be just putting rock wool insulation in the roof, and wherever possible, potentially putting interior storms on the windows, and especially if you ever have to, or you're going to be repairing the siding, but you could do some blown-in insulation, some loose fill insulation in the walls. It's not perfect, but the thing is, we just want to keep the, it's not like you're trying to make it comfortable to sleep in the winter. It's just to try to keep the chill off of the place and keep it heated and a little bit tighter. But you want the building to breathe. It is always been leaky, and you don't want to do vapor barriers anywhere, and you don't want to do spray foam insulation anywhere because that will make it too tight, and then you're going to start to cascade into a whole lot of new issues. Now here's a new one that I have not discussed before, but it'll make a lot of sense, is the sprinkler system. We're throwing this out there because especially if you consider reinstating the fireplaces, it would be very prudent to consider doing a sprinkler system. And the report goes into this in depth. There are 4 different types of sprinkler system. I won't go through them all, but just the basic wet sprinkler system would be probably the most appropriate type of system you could do in this house. The thing is, it could be done with PEX, a flexible pipe that can be snaked through the ceilings and up the walls, as would the radiant system would be. Heads can be hidden in the plaster ceiling with little caps, and when they're activated, the caps pop off and the heads drop. So you'd have these little circles in the ceiling hither and yon, but you're not going to see pipes, and you're not going to see the heads sticking down. So I think installation would not be that bad. It would not be that obtrusive to the house. The cost of the system has come down, and just because of the efficiency of systems, the more common they are, it's not overly cost prohibitive, and the benefits outweigh the negatives. Another point of that, people think, well, if they go off, then everything gets soaked and things are ruined. Well, the thing is, the heads only go off in the room where the fire is, where the heads are activated. So the whole house doesn't get drenched. It's if there's a fire in the kitchen, only those sprinklers go off. And the thing is, things may get damaged by getting soaked, but a fire hose would destroy, the force of it is 10 times or more, or much more than that. And a fire hose would do a lot of damage, but if it can be controlled and contained, then you're going to have damage, but it'll be minimal comparatively speaking. Plus the life safety of it. You do have just one stair going through the middle of this house, and for liability insurance and just peace of mind, in a 200-year-old dry wood structure, it would be something well worth considering.
I'll just to give another view on Greg's side on the sprinkler. My father was in fire protection engineering, so we heard all sorts of things as kids growing up about sprinklers, and I've continued to keep some knowledge. As he says, there's little pieces. It's either a piece of metal that melts or a gas that explodes before a single sprinkler goes off, and they work, right? There's no record of serious loss in any building that was fully sprinklered and the sprinkler system was operating. They are ridiculously good, and that's why the fire guys like them so much. I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why the wet system is actually the best, because there's the fewest parts to go wrong, and they are incredibly reliable. Okay, so here is the wow factor, the wild one. You have that little tiny yard to the side, and for programmatic purposes, you could get out of the house altogether and build a small little building on this location. I put a 3'4" alley in there. That's probably a little too narrow, but but anyway, in Lunenburg, you can build up to the property line, and this could be a 2-story small little building to put in there that could have meeting space, gift shop, public restroom, administrative office. All of those things may be stacked on a couple of floors. and having, you know, a walkway that goes to the back, and it could exit out onto the back at ground level. And it stepped back from the street a little bit to allow for that door into the basement of the house, if that were still desirable as well. And it would, you know, it would not be appropriate to add on to the house directly. You want it to stand as it authentically always has. And you also, you know, it would be frowned upon to make this building look historically accurate. But it would take its precedence, its inspiration from the house, and be something that is, you know, 21st century, but also that would respect and support the architecture of the house itself. So you've actually thrown a cost into there, just, you know, from small renovations to the ultimate of what you could do here. So that is what we've added. So here's the fun part. This is the cost of everything that we have there. And again, these numbers are, I will call them preliminary. There's some research in this, but we are going to be confirming some numbers and, you know, actually calling around and trying to get some tighter numbers on these. And some of the ones I'll say are a little higher. Hopefully, I try to err on the side of expensive. But I'm not sure if we want to go through all of these items. Maybe I'll just do the overall costs of the categories.
Yeah, and I'll make I'll add in the comment that I find with the projects we work on, whenever you're getting into the specialty work in the Maritimes, costing is difficult. And we're seeing, say, federal projects, they have to cost to a really high level of degree. There's only 2 companies in the country that do the costing, and they can't cost work in the Maritimes. So these numbers are good to budget and plan on, and it's hard to know for sure how some of this will play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other wild card right now, as everybody knows, is COVID and supply of materials and how that goes up and down and how long that's going to last. Nobody knows. And now inflation is kicking in. So any type of estimate of any project in the construction industry right now has to be taken with a very big grain of salt. But for instance, that new building, it's like, you know, typical construction right now is $300 and up per square foot, and that's even for a house. So you know, it was, so we have, is that where's that number? Oh, there it is, number line 47. Yeah, we have $400,000 for that small building at 2 levels in there. But you back that off of the total price of everything. We're right at $1 million for all of the work, and added professional fees. That's, you know, and that doesn't have to be, I'll say right now, it's whatever architect you want to hire. And some of these do not require architectural consultation or structural or mechanical or electrical. But if this were to be wrapped into one project, assume there would be a 15% fee. So if it's $1 million, it's $150,000 for fee. And Tom, you might have some comment on contingency. I was debating whether that should be 15, even 20%, but probably to be safe, it should be higher than that. It's hard to know.
Yeah, I mean, as plans become more clear, a lot of this gets easier. I think at this stage, this would be the template to start, and just have the understanding that, hey, as you figure out exactly what you want, what's going to help you serve in what your, I guess, your mission, or as you will, other things will be able to become more clear and be refined.
Yes. Monica, can you go back to the first page that has the structural items, I believe, like the high priority stuff. Yeah. The high priority items there, especially the foundation, for instance. Some of these items are the things that are covered under the application for funding that is coming through right now. So, and some of these things are priced to be done this year. So honestly, those prices are probably going to be the most accurate. Everything else is going to be a bit of a wild card the further out. You know, it's almost impossible to price something you might want to do in 5 years. It's much harder than it ever has been before, but it's a stab at it. So really, to get this building, if when you look at the numbers, bit by bit, it's very doable, and it's also going to mean, though, finding the right people to do it. And in any case, whether it's new construction or restoration, it's very hard at the moment to find people. But still, this is everything, and what we think at the moment anyway. It would cost, if you happen to have all the money you would need and wanted to do everything at once. This is it. So I think that's what we have for the moment. There's a lot more support information in the draft report, of course, but how are we for time? I haven't even been watching.
I think we're right on an hour right now.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. I drag on. But do we have any questions that we want to go over right now? Oops.
Okay.
Oh. My cat.
Sorry, I continue to be a little black square.
Yeah.
Yes, and Natalie's cat has. There are no questions in the chat, so perhaps we could open it up. If anyone has anything would like to ask, please feel free. There's a lot there.
Is there any surprises, or is there anything that you think we missed, or any suggestions? And you'll have time to digest this and review it as well, but
I did have just one general, well, maybe not general thought, but in terms of accessibility, and you alluded to that, Greg,
Yeah.
when you mentioned, I guess, into the getting into the basement, as a possibility. Beyond that, would say wheelchairs be accessible in the back, do you think? I realize it's not a house that really lends itself to wheelchair access, but any thoughts on accessibility issues?
that would be, I'll just say it wouldn't be possible to get a wheelchair where that back door is located, in the landing, and the basement steps are right there. Without modifying and really adding a porch onto the back and blowing out that wall, there really wouldn't be a way to get through. And I don't think, I'd have to check, I don't think the corridor would be wide enough to get a wheelchair into that space at all. But at least if you had that door in the basement, it doesn't make the whole house, of course, accessible. But if you were to restore the kitchen, at least it opens up that experience to people with mobility issues that are in wheelchairs. And if you had a meeting space as well, we should have a wheelchair accessible restroom down there. If you were to do that, and the meeting space would be accessible. So at least, it would be, you would open that level of the house to more people potentially.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
I just ask one question as the treasurer about your numbers. What's the position on HST? Have you included that in the numbers, or is that additional?
Oh, yeah, we didn't include that in the numbers. That's a good point.
I mean, we can get half of it back eventually, but even
Yes.
7.5% on top of $1 million is quite a bit.
Yes, yeah. And as I said, it's a work in progress. So yeah. I think you could count those numbers that are in it at the moment, but we'll refine those numbers and break that out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and Greg and Monica and Tom. It is a lot of information to think about and consider. But again, if anyone does have any questions or comments later on, feel free to email I guess me through the Lunenburg Heritage Society at hotmail.com email. Our website's experiencing some technical difficulties right now, so that won't be a corridor for you to get in touch. But if you reply to the invitation for this this presentation, then you should be able to get in touch. Yeah, so I guess to reiterate what Pat said early on, thank you all for coming this evening and listening and sharing in what we hope to be doing at the museum, and thanking all of our donors as well, because members and donors have been invited. So what our plans are next, we're going to be meeting as a committee, the Knaut-Rhuland House Committee meeting next week to kind of discuss what our next steps are. And if there is feedback, then we can discuss it at that time. We're going to be continuing our fundraising efforts and grant applications so that we can fund this work, and we're very much hoping to be able to get work done this summer, as you can see by the photos from the basement, and it's not getting any better. What else did I want to say? So if if you are interested in helping out, we're more than happy to accept your assistance, financial, volunteer wise, and please spread the word for what we're doing. And I think it's a very exciting project, and I'm excited about it. A little bit nervous, but very closely excited. So again, get in touch with the email, and yeah, thank you for your support. Without it, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing, and we need continued and ongoing support in order to keep the momentum going and get this work done, because I think any of you who have been in the house realize how special it is, and that it's definitely worth preserving. All right.
Would it be okay if I just said one more thing, Natalie? Just to put it a little bit into context. The funding you've gone after, hopefully that comes through, and that will take care of the foundation. And when you take care of the foundation, everything else is good. This is a long wish list, but otherwise, if the house is solid and if you can keep it dry, then it's you can do a lot with just maintenance. So don't be afraid that it's $1 million or nothing. That is kind of everything you could possibly do to this building. But you're doing quite well. And as long as, if you can shore up the foundation and make sure that the house just keeps standing, don't be daunted by this.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we requested having a phased approach to this, so that it wouldn't be overwhelming, and the foundation isn't the sexiest way to get started, and it's not the most visible way, but if you look at the house the right way, you can see that it is needed, even though the paint is peeling. But yes, it'll all come together.
Yeah, the paint can wait.
Yeah.
But the fact that, just to get that.
Overall, the building's in remarkably good shape. I mean, I'd
Yes.
say, yes, there's a foundation issue there, but I've come across a whole lot bigger foundation issues than I've seen in that building.
Mm.
So it's stuff you fix at, and it won't be hard to start realizing some of the value you have on the site.
Yeah.
It's just figuring out how do the goals all map together.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Pat. Bye.
Thank you.
I am here. Just sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I guess if there's nothing else, I'll stop the recording.